You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined tonight by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox.
Good evening. How is everyone today? How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to have a special episode coming out today.
Yeah, so we're excited to release this bonus episode in honor of Donate Life Month, which is celebrated every April and features a month full of activities to encourage organ and tissue donor registration. So without further ado, Rachel, I'm going to let you kick it off today.
Yeah, and before I introduce our lovely guest for today's podcast, I do want to give a quick shout out to one of our Phoenix partners who is in the tissue donation space, Allosource. So I'm really excited to talk so much more about Donate Life Month, but Allosource is a great Phoenix partner. You know, they are actually one of the largest human tissue suppliers, and they provide life-saving skin allografts. So it really fits well in with our podcast name, Girls with Grafts. And we're so honored to work with Allosource because, you know, they help survivors physically heal in that acute phase. And our partnership really allows both of us, Allosource and Phoenix Society, to support the lifelong journey of burn survivors. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to them. But without further ado, I'm really excited for today's guest, who is Jason Schechterle. I probably said that wrong. He can correct me in a quick moment. But growing up, Jason had one dream, and that was to serve as a Phoenix police officer. Inspired by the tragic loss of a local law enforcement hero, Jason worked persistently towards his dream. After serving 4 years in the Airforce, at the age of 26, he achieved his goal to work on the streets of Phoenix as a rookie police officer. Then, only 14 months into what was supposed to be a lifelong career, Jason's life took an unexpected, dramatic, and at the time, tragic turn. On the night of March 26, 2001, a taxi cab crashed into the rear of Jason's patrol car. Upon impact, Jason's car burst into flames, trapping him inside with temperatures reaching over 700 degrees. Through a series of miraculous and fateful circumstances, Jason survived the crash, and ensuring physical and emotional catastrophe. He suffered severe burns to over 40% of his body, which drastically altered his appearance. He has undergone more than 55 surgeries just to have the ability to accomplish simple daily tasks that we often take for granted. His journey chronicles his life for life, his triumph over tragedy, and the inspiration that enables him to continue to overcome unimaginable adversity. His personal narrative amplifies that the power of the human spirit can never be underestimated or extinguished. His story is one of life, rebirth, and transformation. He represents the human experience at its very best, and we're so excited to have him on today's podcast. So thanks for joining us, Jason.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Jason, it's a pleasure to hear all about you and learn about your story. That was the first time I've heard about your story. So I want to start at the beginning.
Okay.
And talk a little bit about growing up. You always wanted to be a police officer. I see you've got some police officer memorabilia behind you as well. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your love of wanting to be a police officer and what that passion came from?
Yeah, that is, believe it or not, that's the actual shirt that I was wearing when I had my accident. So I definitely keep it right here in my office, along with we could talk more about it, but the knife that was used to cut me out of my car. And so I was just always felt a call to service, enamored with people in uniform, family full of military veterans, things like that. And I chose that path pretty early on. Had no idea how to go about getting it, but I definitely knew I wanted to do it. So I gave up golf scholarship out of high school and joined the United States Air Force. Again, wanted to serve. Purposes bigger than myself. Put on a uniform and got the structure and discipline I needed. Came home, and life changes very quickly on us when we're young. I was 22 years old, and I met and married my wife, Susie. We had a couple of kids, and I ended up with a wonderful job with Arizona Public Service, and didn't pursue what I thought was going to be my dream or my career until the death of Marc Atkins, which happened March 26th of 1999. And then it was a calling, and I went right away and I applied, got hired with the city of Phoenix, which I was born and raised here. So there's kind of nothing like serving the community that you are familiar with and that you have deep roots in. And I started that in September of 99, first graduated class of 2000, and I hit the streets.
And then it really wasn't long after, I think it was 14 months I read when I was reading your bio, that the accident happened. So can you just share a little bit more about what happened that night?
Yeah, it was only 14 months. I mean, it takes a year to get off probation, and really it takes 3 to 5 years to even get a grasp and a confidence in knowing what you're doing as a police officer, especially a patrol officer. So I look back on it, it felt like I did it for 5 minutes. And I went to work on March 26th of 01. So ironically, 2 years to the day after Marc Atkins was killed. It was his anniversary. So I actually went to work that day with an extra sense of duty and pride. And I remember I drove over I was supposed to work from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I left briefing. I drove over to the spot. Phoenix is a large city, obviously. I drove over to the spot where Marc was shot. It's got a beautiful memorial marker there. Spent some time, just making the sign of the cross, thanking him for his service and his sacrifice, thanking him for the opportunity and being my why, my reason. And little did I know, about 8 hours from then, I was going to come very close to needing that same memorial marker that he did. So I went through a pretty quiet, boring day, went on a couple of minor car accident calls, took a couple of paper report calls, just wasn't much going on. And about 11:20 p.m., the dispatcher came on the radio with an emergency call that was not in my patrol zone. And it kind of went in one ear and out the other. I didn't pay any attention to it, but the officers that are busy. So she came back on very quickly. And again, it was an emergency call. So I grabbed the radio and I said, I'll head that direction. Long ways to travel, is out of my patrol zone. So I need to run what we call code 3, lights and siren, get there as quick as I can. And I was headed eastbound on Thomas Road. And just for those listeners not real familiar with Phoenix, it's about 5 minutes east of downtown Phoenix, a very busy intersection. There's Phoenix Children's Hospital, Arizona Heart Institute, State Route 51 overpass. And as I approached the light, it was red. So even though I'm driving with my lights and siren on, I still have a responsibility to come to a complete stop, make sure that people getting on and off the freeway will yield to my emergency vehicle. It only takes a second and a half to clear an intersection. And just as I was going to proceed, I was struck from behind by a taxi cab. The driver was suffering an epileptic seizure at the time. And according to the investigation, he was doing 115 miles an hour when he hit me.
That's a crazy story. And
Oh, it gets a lot crazier. I was just taking a pause.
Yeah.
So you could ask me a question.
Well, I was going to say, wasn't there, I think I read on your website that there was a fire truck or something right at the same intersection?
Yeah, I mean, if I pitched my story to Hollywood, they'd throw it in the trash and be like, that's not anywhere close to believable. We're not going to do it. So yeah, my car burst into flames. It actually traveled 270 feet through the intersection. I was at that speed, that violent of a crash. I was knocked unconscious. Thank God. I have no memory of the impact of the fire or being in that crazy chaos. Had I been yelling and screaming and scared and sucking in all that hot air, I would have died very quickly. But
now, Jason, the second you hit it, it burst into flames, or the second it was hit?
Upon impact, yep, burst into flames.
Wow.
So when flying across the other side of the intersection, and 50 feet from where I came to rest was a Phoenix fire truck. And they happened to be on their way to the same emergency call that I was going to, and they were coming from a different direction. And of course, police and fire, we don't monitor each other's radios, but they pulled up to the intersection at just the right moment and went to make a right turn. The driver, they're called engineers. Her name's Rebecca Joy, and she looked to her left to make sure she could make a turn, and the world literally exploded right in front of her. And I never want to lose sight of the human emotion involved. Doesn't matter what uniform we're wearing, what job we're doing, we are full of emotions, and until you're thrust in a situation like that, you have no idea how you're going to feel, react, respond. And I give these individuals, not only did I have a fire truck in my intersection, I had the exact 4 people that I needed. They were able to turn their truck, drive maybe 50 feet, go to work for me, along with 2 police officers who arrived very quickly on scene. And again, 2 individuals that were very good friends of mine, and they had no idea what they were rolling up on. And then to see it's a police car and to think, who's in there? That's one of my friends who's dying right now. And they got out of their car and they all went to work, which obviously to say it's chaotic, to say it's, people who aren't involved in fires. And again, I was not awake, but the accurate description is a fire sounds like you're underneath a freight train. Like it is an intense and noisy situation, especially one that was as large. My car was completely engulfed. The flames were all the way up, licking the bottom of the overpass. So it was a hell of a scene. And, the firefighters have jobs to do. One's on the radio giving incident details, trying to get more units to help. The engineer's getting her truck prepped. One of the firefighters is battling the blaze. This young rookie, poor 22-year-old kid, he given the grim task of getting me out of the car and thought for sure I was dead. So they went through a lot. And then one of those officers ran up using that knife that's right behind me, cut my seatbelt, tried to pull me out of the driver's side window. It's not exactly a big opening. I'm 6'3", weighed a very solid 200 pounds at the time, and long legs, size 13 boots. Got stuck underneath the steering wheel and dashboard. This other police officer crawled into the cab of the car to help free my legs. And from the moment of impact till I was out of the car was 90 seconds. And being 2.5 miles away from what I think is the best burn center in the United States at what was then known as Maricopa County Hospital, now known as Valleywise, I was on their trauma table in less than 8 minutes.
It's remarkable and how quickly things happen at that time. So you kind of gave us the background of the accident, but in terms of physical recovery, once you arrived at what's now known as Valleywise, we've heard you share that you didn't initially know what your injuries were like. Do you want to share a little bit about kind of, I know you said you don't remember the accident, right? So
it was just such a long, slow process in terms of the physical, the mental, the emotional, because I was 2.5 months in a coma, not expected to survive. Nobody survives 4th-degree burns to their head and face. It just, it can't happen. And, I love in your introduction talking about Allosource, and I'm going to happily tell you a lot of things about some wonderful people like the firefighters and my doctors. But when you go through what I did and receive the injuries that I did, 4th-degree burns to my entire head and face, the only reason I'm sitting here talking to you is because of tissue donation. And so 2.5 months in a coma, I wake up to obviously an unexpected, unimaginable nightmare. I'm blind, so I can't see myself, couldn't process what I was being told. The only thing I've ever been scared of in my life is fire. So when I told my car had caught on fire, I went through, just the crazy range of emotions, crying every day, lost the job I love. What are my children going to think of me? Yelling and cussing at people if they even dared to walk into my room. And went that way for a while until I had a couple of incredible epiphanies that started me on my path of resilience. Unfortunately, 28 years old at the time, and I had not been affected by much in life. I'd never experienced a death in my family. My parents were still married. All 4 of my grandparents were alive and married. I've got, growing family. I just knew nothing about adversity, especially the uniqueness that is a burn injury. There's nothing quite like it. So it was a very long and slow process, but I did have those realizations I mentioned that started me on the path of fighting and becoming more and more resilient and just seeing what I could accomplish. And I can tell you, March 26th of this year, I had my 22nd anniversary, and I don't consider it a bad day, a dark day, a dreadful day. It's just a nice reminder of, I've made it a lot farther than I ever could have tried to imagine in my mind.
We talk a lot about burn anniversaries on this show, and I won't steal a question from later, but I think that's important, right? If I know how I used to in the beginning, like, how am I supposed to celebrate this? Or if I don't want to celebrate it, mourn it. And I think there's no right answer for it, but I definitely know there's a lot of gratitude for that day. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you're going to ask later, because I have a lot of thoughts and irony surrounding that. I already told you, Marc Atkins was killed March 26th. My burn was March 26th. And it seems like each and every anniversary for 22 years has been something different. Sometimes happy, sometimes I had another significant tragedy happen on that same day many years later. So it's an odd day, that's for sure. But
it is.
so I ended up spending 5.5 months total in the hospital, which I know that sounds like a long time, but I was pretty proud of the fact that doctors thought I would be there for 9 or 10 months. And I fought pretty hard. I walked out of there, went to a rehab center, tried to learn just the basics of life. I was blind. I lost half my fingers to amputation. I was down to about 115 pounds, just crazy frail and sick. So I went to a rehab center to just try and learn some of the basics of life, and finally went home on August 17th of 2001. And that began the true, that's when the mental and emotional adversity was like, hey, you think the physical part was hard? Wait till we go a few rounds with you.
Yeah, no, that's something, I think all survivors can relate to, and something we hear all the time is that, initially you're just so focused on that physical recovery. Mostly you want to go home. That's the number one goal. But then once you're home, it's shock number 2, because it's like, oh, I haven't been dealing with my mental and emotional health because I've just been so focused on that physical. So what was it like when you were getting home? And if you don't mind sharing a little bit too about what your family, your wife and your kids, and how they were handling it as well.
Yeah, I was both excited to go home. I was proud, like I said, of achieving the timeline I did. I was incredibly scared because, when you're in the hospital and you form these relationships, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I was able to just selfishly lay there and think about myself and let other people take care of me. There's no more strength and beauty in the world than inside vulnerability, even though it's a word we don't like to use or feel. But then I get home and part of me was like, I kind of want to go back to the hospital because this is tough. I've got, my wife stuck by my side, but she had to give up her career. She had to become my Uber driver every day and taking me to constant, I was still doing therapy every day. I was still going to surgery every other week. I had two very young kids, a 7-year-old daughter, a son who turned 3. While I was in my coma, he didn't recognize me. He would say, "You're not my dad," and just the craziest things. And meanwhile, I am, going through the highs and the lows of, well, I'm still alive and I'm still a dad and I've got these huge responsibilities and I want to fight. And then it was the claustrophobia and just how terrified I was being in that complete darkness. I mean, there's hands down nothing worse than being, at least for me, being completely blind, especially after 28 years of life. But also looking back on it, I cherish the gift that I wasn't able to look in a mirror on June 12th when I woke up from my coma, because I don't know that I would have mentally recovered from that. So to have those 9 months basically before I regained some of my eyesight, it was just a journey. But then things started to go well. I was getting stronger with therapy. I was gaining weight. My family and I were getting through it as a family, and positive momentum. It's an incredible thing. Just get out of the way, because it's unstoppable once it starts going.
So you gained your sight back a little bit. You can see us today?
Well, yeah.
But in terms of that gradual progression, so I'm sure there was a point, right, where then you were able to look at yourself in the mirror. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember what that was like, kind of being able to gain your sight back? And was that something that was gradual, or was that something that was with the help of doctors? How did that progress?
So my blindness was the heat and fire caused a lot of damage to my corneas.
Okay.
And what fire will do to your corneas is it will form blood vessels that cannot be taken away. And when those blood vessels are full, it's just a dark curtain that can't be drawn back. So I describe it as being in a pool and trying to see something at the other end underwater. It's that blurry. But, doctors are amazing. They use my own blood because your body heals itself the best. I put blood drops in my eyes for a very long time, stopped the scars from growing. Again, can't take them away, but stopped them.
Right.
But yeah, to answer your question, so when I woke up from that surgery, and yes, I remember this very well, just to see light and colors again was a huge exhale. Okay, yeah, I'm out, at least I'm out of the darkness.
Right.
And then my first thought was, I got to see myself, but I wanted to do it alone because I didn't know. I had asked a lot of questions to a lot of different people. So I had an idea, but people don't always want to tell you the brutal honest truth because I think it's harder to watch somebody you love go through something than it is to go through it yourself. And I wouldn't want to be in that position. So I understand, but I didn't know how I was going to react. So I went into the restroom when I got home. I closed the door. I locked the door just in case I had a complete meltdown. And I had to get really close to the mirror and just kind of look at a couple inches of my face at a time. And I mean, I guess it was shocking, but I knew it was going to be really, really bad. And I had bandages. I had, well, I forgot the name of it, that yellow zero form stuff hanging everywhere. And
Zero form was my least favorite thing on this planet.
oh my gosh.
The smell still gets me to this day.
Yeah. So I wasn't exactly looking at just my scar. I was still looking at a patient, you know. But for as hard as I could say it truly was a relief to finally at least understand. Hadn't really started the acceptance part or anything else, but I could understand. And because it was 9 months later, I was finally at the point that I was going to survive. So now it's my choice. What do I want to work on cosmetically? Like, what do I want to try to improve? And, you know, when you lose your entire appearance and your physical identity, the face that I had known for all those years, I mean, it's crazy to think that one morning I looked in the mirror and didn't realize that's the last time I'd ever see that face. So, but it really was, I guess, in a way empowering, because I get to choose now. I get to, if I can get to acceptance, which for all the start finish lines we have in life, you're never going to be able to start anything without accepting the facts, because until you accept the facts, you have no control over altering what you can control. I didn't want to be burned. No, I didn't want to be stuck at home and not going to work. I didn't want a lot of things, but I was, and that was the fact. And so once I was able to get that, you know, soaked in, then to have some control again, finally, was very empowering, very much.
So you were able to accept that and move forward. And, I'm flashing forward a little bit, but today you're a motivational speaker. So you are not afraid to get on stage and put yourself out there and be social. I'm sure that didn't happen overnight. But do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what took you to kind of get there? Obviously acceptance was a big one, but when did you finally feel ready? Like, how long before you decided to kind of get out there? And
that's such an interesting journey. I was dealing with my appearance, even though I accepted it, and I was proud of who I was. I returned to work 18 months after the accident. I had another child 18 months after the accident. I ended up working with the homicide department with the city of Phoenix. And, when you're doing a job that you can speak for victims who can't speak for themselves, and you've worked with families that are affected by that kind of violence and tragedy, it's such an honor and so much bigger than just me. That went a long way in my recovery process. And, it's very humbling, but I got to do a lot of things because I was injured in the line of duty. And a lot of people don't get those opportunities. So I had some wonderful inspirational things like carrying the Olympic torch. When we had our third child, it was like the lead story on the news the night he was born. And I'm sitting in the hospital like, are you kidding me right now? They just announced that the Schechterles had a baby. It's just hilarious. Throwing out the first pitch at a D-backs game and stuff like that. So it was because of that and the news, I would get invited, to go to schools or go to churches, things like that. And I had no idea. First of all, I was not a public speaker back then. Not something I ever thought I would do, didn't enjoy it, nothing. But my story hadn't really evolved, so I didn't know how to tell it. And then, going to schools, and I appreciate that teachers and educators thought it was going to be good for the kids. Certain ages, it wasn't good for them. So I just really immersed myself in my job and continuing to get healthier, working on being the dad I wanted to be. And then I retired from the police department 5.5 years after the accident in August of 2006. And it was great to just be Jason again. Just, I came home, I learned how to play golf again, which I told you I had a scholarship coming out of high school. I was pretty good. And it was one of my favorite joys in life. And I gave it up. That's the only thing I use the word can't on. I just quit. And then I decided to try it again. Well, I learned how to play golf again. And then I went into business for myself. Not a businessman. Don't have I'm a military guy and a cop. I know exactly nothing about business. So, but I went into business for myself, turned out to be very successful. And I was really enjoying life. And so 2010, I did a speech, and there was just, I think there was like 700 people in the room. It was crazy. And I got done, and this guy came up to me, and, people want to come up once in a while and say hi or shake your hand, whatever. And this guy, I'll never forget, he only talked to me for 7 quick seconds. And he had tears in his eyes, and he said, Jason, I'm a New York firefighter. I was at 9/11, lost a bunch of my friends, and I'm currently going to a divorce, and you changed my life today. And so, I'm one of those lucky people that I had 2 aha moments in my life. When Marc Atkins was killed, I knew it was a calling to be a police officer. And then when that gentleman uttered those words to me, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So walked out the door, got on the phone, sold my company immediately, and went about learning how to be the best public speaker I can be. And been doing it now for almost 13 years, and it just keeps getting better and better. I would not trade places with anybody in this world. I wouldn't want another job. I just got back from England, and I was speaking to a professional football team, what we would call soccer. And then I was on the field is called the pitch over there. And I was on the pitch. There's 27,000 people in the stands going crazy. And I'm like, yeah, just before I got on with you, I was ordering they sent me a picture of it. And so I ordered an 8x10 because I want to hang it in my office. But I'm just like, look at what you got to do. Look at your life. Are you kidding me right now? It just fills me with so much love and joy and motivation. And I can't wait till my next one.
I love that. That's amazing. And, it's crazy, I'm sure, for you to look back too, because imagine someone telling you when you first woke up after your coma in the hospital that one day you'd be a motivational speaker in front of a crowd of 27,000 people. You would have never believed them. But it's that journey. It's ongoing. There's ups and downs, but if you believe in yourself, you can make it there. And I love that.
Yeah. And it's been very empowering also. So when I started traveling, I had to take what I call a crutch with me. I had to take a friend, or my dad, before he passed away, would go with me, because how am I going to get myself through an airport? I can't sit alone to eat. I'm way too apprehensive about my appearance, and I don't want to disrupt other people's day. This is not something you see all the time. And then I reached a point, it's probably about 6 years ago, where I finally said, you know what, Jason, you got to stop interrupting other people's lives and making them take days off work. And you got to do this. And so I started traveling alone, and such a source of strength. Still to this day, every time I land back at Sky Harbor Airport, it's like, you know what, you did it. And now, of course, we were really fast forwarding, but now when I go through an airport, or I am sitting alone in a restaurant and I have people stare at me, sometimes I am like, why are they looking at me? And then I go, oh, I forget sometimes, because I feel so I just turned 50 years old last November, and
happy birthday.
Thank you. I've never felt as healthy and strong physically, mentally, emotionally, in every way. And then I get to go out and do this, where I meet other people. probably 30 to 40% of my speeches are to organ and tissue organizations in this country. And I mean, you want to get moved. People don't even understand. I walk off a stage and I'm like, I'm the most inspired person in this room right now. This is awesome. So it just continues. And like I said, I absolutely cannot wait to get on the road again and get back out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. But so before, I do want to dive into Donate Life Month a little bit and tissue and donation and all that. But before we do that, I do want to ask, is there, what's one piece of advice you'd want a survivor to know? I know that's a loaded question because there's probably a lot of pieces of advice, but if you could pick one.
Pick one. For me, it is to make meaning. If you don't have a purpose in life, two of the most unseen things that we have to get through, we're all going to face adversity. Yes, burns are unique, but that doesn't take away from people going through a divorce or fighting cancer, or those who are in a wheelchair, or those who simply are on their way to an important meeting and their tire goes flat and they're stranded on the side of the road. I mean, adversity is adversity. And I really don't like to compare it because I don't think it's fair, but you got to have grit and you got to have resilience. And the only way to have those things is to make meaning. My favorite, so I'm really big on cliches. I think they're powerful. They mean something. That's why they exist. And one of my favorite movies is Tombstone. You ever seen it?
I have not.
Okay, so it's one of the most quotable movies ever. Val Kilmer plays a role that is arguably the greatest role ever played, but Kurt Russell plays the real character named Wyatt Earp. And toward the beginning of the movie, he gets into a scuffle with another person, and he whoops on him pretty good. And then he just very calmly says, "Are you going to do something or just stand there and bleed?" And I'm like, that's such a metaphor for life. I don't care what happens. Are you going to do something or just stand there and bleed? And I've learned over the years to openly say, no, I'm going to do something. You mess with the wrong person. And so that's what it is. You got to make meaning. And no matter what comes, if you have a purpose, if you have a sense of direction, if you have a why, or like me, you have 25 whys, you can get through anything.
I so agree with that. I think it's really important to have something to focus on, right? I know for me, like during my recovery, if I just sat there and felt bad for myself, I think there were lots of opportunities for me to go in that like spiral of thinking that I can't do something. And so setting goals, we talk about that a lot in support groups and whatnot, of like, it's really important for you to set a goal for yourself, even if it's a really tiny one, right? So it doesn't matter how big or small it is, but those goals are what's going to help you get back out there.
Well, and you bring up a great point. Don't ever discount the small steps. You have to honor those small victories, because that's what builds your fortress. That's what builds your foundation, is the hundreds of small things, right? It's not, we don't just get to leap ahead and everything is magically fine. So
I'm sure you didn't walk out of the hospital overnight, right? So it took time and lots of rehab to get to there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was. And I think I missed out on a lot of that journey because I didn't pay attention in the way that I do now. And I probably wasn't capable of it. I just had too many things.
A lot going on. Yeah.
Consuming me, from physical pain to the mental and emotional stuff. But once I was finally able to, like, hey, pay attention to what's happening every day, and write it down, talk about it. The small stuff is so important. So I'm glad you bring that up.
My counselor talks a lot about journaling, right? Like, and being able to go back and then reflect, like, this is where I was. For me, it was a photo journey, right? So I can look back and even to this day go, oh my gosh, like, I forgot about that. Like, I was so like, discounted about that and upset. But then, like, looking back, it was such a small thing, but it's so nice to be able to reflect on like where you were and how far you've come. So whether it's photos or written, I think it's really important.
Yeah, journaling, I learned, is so so important, and it's so
Mm.
therapeutic, because when we're
So
going through
healing.
moments, when we're going through these moments, we think, "Oh, I'll remember this." No,
You
no, you
won't.
won't. No, I'm lucky I can
No.
remember what I had for dinner last night.
Yeah.
But it's fun, once in a while I'll even just flip to what was I feeling on
On
this
this
day
day.
4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have no idea. And then I'll read it and like, wow, really?
Yeah. And in
That's what
that
I was.
moment, everything seems so like important to you. And then you look back and you're like, that wasn't
Yeah.
important. Like that was a little thing, but it's
So
important.
now
I think it helps you with mindfulness.
Mindful, yes. And I always use the term mindfulness with meditation. Like, I'm not one to meditate I don't sit in the perfect yoga pose. I don't even know how to meditate. But I think for each of us, when you find a way to
Focus
have
on
mindfulness meditation, and that's why journaling is so important to me, because I want to know, what am I feeling right now? Like when I got home, I was in England for 9 days, and it was 9 days of just joy and perfection. Like it was the most unbelievable trip of my life. And I had to come home and write down. I had to go back over my schedule, and because I was already forgetting things. And it'll be fun to reflect on that someday.
Yeah, I'm a yoga teacher myself, and mindfulness doesn't have to be right, or even just meditation. Like I know for me, every day, and for lunchtime, I take what I call my nap, but it doesn't always have to be a nap, right? Sometimes just laying on the couch, closing my eyes, and like not hearing anything, and just focusing on how often do we just sit with our feelings, right? It doesn't happen that often. We're so busy on our phones or things that it can be really difficult. So meditation and mindfulness doesn't have to be like I'm sitting here, like you said, in a yoga pose, like zenning out, trying to like, it could be just sitting with your emotions, whether that's on the bed or on the couch, or just even coloring. That helps me sometimes. I think there's so many ways to kind of really focus on that mindfulness.
Yeah, and what really helped for me was to turn what you're saying, make it a habit of a usual routine. So
hard,
because it is so hard. And I struggled with it for years. I'm like, I don't have time. I don't feel like it. I'm going through this. I've got this stress and anxiety of all the stuff I have to do today. And then I learned that what works for me is, you know what? No matter what this day is today, no matter what you're feeling when you wake up, for me, like when I turn on the shower, I know I have a solid 1 minute before it gets warm. Well, you know what? For that 1 minute, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit here with my feelings, and just that 1 minute changes my entire day. If I only have 3 minutes, I can go to a song. If I'm lucky enough to have 30 minutes, then those are the rare days. But yeah, that's a great point that people need to understand. Find the time to sit with your feelings. And if it's only 1 minute, you can do anything for a minute. I mean, come on. So again, the shower is an interesting, it's my crazy.
I like that. Because it is funny. It takes me a while for the water to warm up. So what can you get done in that time?
Yeah. You can put your phone down, and you can, while you're waiting for the shower to warm up, you can accomplish a lot with inside your mind in 60 seconds. It's pretty awesome.
Well, and as we mentioned, I know we're getting up close to some time here. So I love that. But I do want to talk a little bit about Donate Life Month. So April is Donate Life Month, which while many people think of it as organ donation, right? When it comes to donate life, tissue and eye donation are also extremely important. And tissue donation highly impacts the burn survivor community. And until I was a burn survivor myself, didn't realize that how impactful tissue donation is. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you for a little bit more on Donate Life Month.
Yeah, and exactly. Until you're in the burn survivor community, a lot of people, like you said, Amber, think of Donate Life Month as just organs, and it's so much more than that. And that's why we partner with Allosource and Community Tissue Services and Integra Life Sciences and these tissue donation partners, because like Jason mentioned earlier, you need it in physical healing. So many survivors need those allografts, skin grafts to for that physical recovery to even survive a burn injury. So Jason, I'm glad you shared that, you did receive those allografts, but, I did a little reading on you before, and I know you are an advocate of Donate Life Month and, just tissue donation in general. So can you share a little bit more about, why you're passionate about that advocacy?
Well, I didn't know for several years until after I was burned what actually saved my life. And it
Wow.
was one of my doctors who now, unfortunately, has passed away, Dr. Dan Caruso. He shared with me the importance of tissue donation. And the other thing I didn't understand was I didn't have one donor, because tissue is the one thing that we can't keep, right? We're going to reject it. So it's easy to talk about a heart transplant or lung transplant or kidney, but as I started to learn about tissue, and that I had dozens and dozens and dozens of donors to get me through those initial weeks, and then one person donating skin can help up to 120 people. That's mind-boggling. And so and then when I started doing public speaking, I would go to these gift of life organizations, and I'm very proud. I'm glad you mentioned community tissue services, because one of the most things I'm most proud of is I'm on the board for CTS. They're based in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm going there at the end of April. I absolutely love everything about this. I just got back from Nevada, where I did 2 family remembrance ceremonies, which is an incredibly emotional experience, because I'm in a room. I mean, the one in Las Vegas had almost 500 people, and every one of them were there because they had lost a loved one who donated something. They left something behind, and the gift of life is not 3 words. Like, it means something. Look, I have a 20-year-old son in college right now whose life should not even exist. I mean, yay, I got out of a car. Yay, I made it through a few surgeries. Look, there's a whole lot more to it. And to be able to share with these families, it sounds ridiculous to say thank you, but there are no other words. And there's a lot of people who don't have the platform that I do, or the ability to share that thank you. So I try to speak on behalf of the probably hundreds of thousands of people that are out living good lives right now because of the gift of life. But tissue donation is incredibly important, and it just helps so many people. So if you're willing to do it, and I encourage people all the time, check the box on your driver's license application. Do not let your family be stuck in that situation while you're on a life support machine, or they just found out an hour ago that you died in some way, and their lives are forever changed. That's not the time when they need to be asked. And I give a lot of credit to these people who work. I could never work in these organizations, because they have to go into these emergency rooms and ask these tough questions, but they know in their heart they're doing it for people like us, right? Like we're their why, and they do it. So just, if it moves you, please sign up. It's easy to do, and then the family doesn't have to do anything. The doctors see it and they take care of it. But yeah, I love talking about it. April's a big month. Again, I'm going to CTS. Very proud of them. Very proud of Allosource. I've spoken to, I don't think you can name an organization in the 50 states that I have not spoken to on this topic. And it's something I am incredibly passionate about, because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
I love that. I love that you talked about your son too, right? Like, it's the gift that was given to you kind of passed on even further. So that's
And then I always
beautiful.
tell people, well, imagine, his name's Mason. Imagine if he has a few children, and then they have a few children. We are talking about people consider this like some random tragic moment in time, and all of a sudden you're going to put endless generations of beauty on the world. I mean, you can't wrap your mind around that. It's just awesome. And it's a beautiful thing to be filled with that kind of love and understanding every day.
Well, as you mentioned, it's easy to register as a tissue donor. You can sign up online through your state registry and in person at your local DMV. And if you have an iPhone, you can use the health app. It sends your information to a national computer system. So it's super easy to do.
So easy.
Hopefully we can change a couple of lives by folks listening to this podcast and encourage them to become tissue donors as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So in honor of Donate Life Month, if you're listening anytime, whether it's in April or after or far in the future, we encourage you to register. Amber listed those ways. It'll be in the link in our description notes as well. So we encourage you to sign up. It's so easy to do. It's really a gift that can keep on giving. And it is, like I said, Donate Life Month. So be sure you're following Phoenix Society, Allosource, Community Tissue Services, all on social, their websites. There'll be so many ways that you can spread the message, get involved, help out someone in need.
And one tissue donor can save or enhance the lives of up to 75 or more recipients, just like Jason. So it's important to note that just by clicking that box, you can save a life. So Jason, we always ask our guests 2 final questions. So we're coming up on time here. But first and foremost, I think we talked a little bit about this, but what does self-care look like for Jason?
Self-care looks like for Jason, first of all, forgive the person in the mirror, because we tend to blame ourselves for things. I was overwhelmed by guilt of the life change I had caused my children. I was overwhelmed that I couldn't go back to work and serve my community. And I was angry at myself. And even though I hadn't done anything wrong, the guy who hit me went to jail. But I'm not a victim. I'm accountable for what's happened. So first of all, you have to forgive the person in the mirror. And you know, if you don't love yourself, you might as well be dying already. You know, you don't want to look back on life when you're toward the end and have any kind of those regrets. But if you love yourself right now, you are living every day, every moment. And so that's what I just find whatever moves me each and every day. It's something different. You know, today I was excited to do this podcast. Tomorrow I'll be excited. I have my own podcast. I'm going to play golf the day after that. I'm going to go to Charlotte and see my son. He plays baseball. I'm going to just each and every day. And that's what self-love is. It's a constant ongoing thing, and you got to nurture it and grow it. Right.
Definitely. And I think that goes back to what you were even talking earlier about journaling and, you know, writing down those, you know, notes, the self-affirmations, just reminding yourself of that self-love is so, so important. And so our final question, and we touched on this a little bit earlier as well, but how or what do you do to celebrate your burn anniversary? Maybe if you even want to take a few moments and share, you know, how that's changed over the past 22 years. You know, we love to hear it.
Yeah, I remember the first year I was just dreading it. And I think for anybody who goes through a life-changing situation, the problem with that first year, that box you're stuck in, is every day you can think back to, okay, a year ago today, things were normal. Things were the way I want to go back to that day. Well, then when that first anniversary comes, the day after, it's like, okay, well, a year ago today, I was in a coma. A year ago today, I was going to die. So things started to improve after that. And I'm not huge on a lot of dates. I mean, I'm not my 50th birthday. Yeah, that was a big deal, but it's every day is a reason to celebrate. And then over the years, I just, you know, I usually meet with 2 of the firefighters that saved me. We have lunch together, and I still learn things that I didn't even know. I mentioned the other tragedy I had. So my 16th anniversary, my dad passed away on March 26, 2017. And, you know, I'm holding his hand while he died, and through my tears and my gratitude of being 44 years old and still having my dad, I was like, you couldn't wait just one day, Pop? Are you kidding me? But then I remember, and it's on my Instagram post, the very next year, one of the firefighters came to my youngest son's baseball game, and it was on March 26th. And it was the first time I'm like, you know what? That was the first year I said, I'm sick of this day. I'm sick of this number. And it was the number that my son wears intentionally to play baseball. I said, I don't even want to, I'm not leaving the house tomorrow. Nothing. Well, he had a baseball game. This firefighter shows up. My son has a great game, and they take a picture together. And every time I look at that picture, that's the reminder that, you know what? It's not about the date. It was a good day. That was a good day. And so my burniversary, and my kids are funny. They'll text me happy burn day or, instead of birthday, things like that. And we laugh a lot, but I think you have to deal with it in your own way. And some of us get really stuck on those dates, and it can bog us down in a very bad way. So I try not to let it. And so.
Yeah, I think when you said like that date can bother you too, right? I know last year on April 4th is my birthday, and ironically Rachel's is the 5th. Yeah, Rachel.
Oh, so the first.
Wow.
So
the first. So yes. we're really close to each other, and we find that, right, like last year around this time, I was actually back in the hospital. I had contracted sepsis, and I remember just thinking, like, I don't want to be back in the hospital on my anniversary. And I went home on that day, but like, it's a day where you're like, what is with the 4th, right? Like, why does it have to be like this? And it brings you back to that, like, is this my bad luck day? Like, there were many times where I'm like, I don't want anything to do with the 4th of the month, because it can be a sad day. And I know my dad, his birthday was on March 4th. So it's difficult for, to just realize like that date can be it can be just something that you're like, what is it, the 4th of the month or something? But I think getting past that and knowing like, this is a day that I can celebrate, and choosing to, maybe practice mindfulness that day or just celebrate it. But yes, it can be really frustrating when you feel like, why this day, right? Could it be any other day that I went through this?
Right. Isn't it amazing how when we have these kind of, we call them burniversaries, but for anybody who has an anniversary of something tragic, all of a sudden that number starts showing up everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
It literally, it's. I'm like, something's happening on the 26th. It could be August 26th, and I'm like, really? Yeah. What?
Of all the days, yeah.
What is it with this number? And then, but the ironies start to really come into focus, and you have to find your own way to deal with those. And I tend to, use humor a lot, or like you said, just some quiet mindfulness to get me through it, or else I'm no different than anybody. I could go down a rabbit hole in less than a second if I gave myself the opportunity to do it.
Permission to do it.
Exactly. I just refuse to do that. And I hope I continue to, my angel on this shoulder and my demon on this shoulder. The demon never wins. Thank goodness. The angel's a pretty good fighter. So you just have to keep going every single day.
1000%. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today and join us in advocating for Celebrate Life or Donate Life Month. But with that, we have a few moments. Anything last you want to leave us with today, or the survivors that we have listening? Any words of wisdom before we close out today?
Yeah, I want to remind people that life is 10% what happens to you. It's 90% how you react to it. I love thinking about, what a Phoenix stands for. I'm born and raised in Phoenix. I was a Phoenix police officer. I actually did rise from the ashes. And I've realized over the years that no matter who you are, doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your age, your race, your gender, or how much money you have in the bank, we're all equal on our human spirit. And it's designed for one thing. It will take you away from risk and straight toward reward. Just let it fly.
Oh, that is beautiful, Jason. And
Yeah.
I will be sure we include links of how to get in touch with you. I think I have your Instagram. We have your website. So if anyone wants to reach out to Jason for any of the speaking or even just to connect with him, we'll be sure to put that in the description as well, Jason.
Thank you so much, ladies. It has been a true pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.